Hello everyone, my name's Jamin. Thanks so much for visiting my channel. In this video, I have a Dell Precision 5510. I'm going to show you how to get inside, access your keyboard. So first thing, power down the computer the correct way. Make sure it's off and unplugged from your charger. We're then going to flip the computer over to access our bottom case screws. Now you have a total of 10 screws, 4 along the bottom here of my screen, 4 along the top of my screen, and then 1 on either side, left and right, towards the middle. After that, this little panel here, you're going to flip it up. There's going to be a little groove right here. You're going to put a little flat metal pry tool in there, pop this panel up, and there'll be a screw in this corner and a screw in this corner as well to take up this bottom case. After all the screws have been removed, you're going to take a small flat pry tool. I suggest a plastic pry tool as it will scratch your computer far less than a metal one will. You're going to go across the seam of the bottom case and pry it up from the computer. It's probably best to start from the top corner of my screen here or here near your hinge covers. And if you get stuck at a certain area, leave it, go to the other side and continue in the other direction. Last thing to shout out about this, make sure you don't put the pry tool too far in. There are internal components near the edge. You could damage something. Just keep the pry tool right on the edge and slowly pop that bottom case up. After the bottom case has been removed, this is what you're looking at for the inside of your computer. Now, as a general computer repair side note, whenever I'm working on a computer in my shop, I have it sitting on an anti-static mat. Either that or an anti-static bracelet are great ideas to use to avoid damaging anything in your computer when you're working on it. I will have a link above. Also below in the description, it'll take you to a list of all the supplies and tools that I use in my shop, along with some recommended accessories. Now, before I do anything in a computer, I always remove or at least unplug my battery. A computer is safest to work on when as little power as possible is running through it. Now, the plug to your battery is right here in the top right-hand corner of your battery. Now, this goes for any cables or any wires in any computer that you work on. Try never pulling on the actual wires. If at all possible, try to just manipulate that plug. And as you can see here, there's a little lip on that plug right there, a little one on the right. If you can use a small flat pry tool, you may be able to wiggle that out without pulling on these wires. If you do need to pull on the wires, grip all of them and very slowly, gently wiggle that plug out. You want to be very careful when pulling on wires in a computer. To remove the battery, you see this little notation here, M2X4. Those are M2 screws times 4 of them. So there's 2 of them right here near the arrows, and then 2 down here near the arrows. That's how you would unplug your battery. So now that the battery has been removed, we are going to have to remove pretty much everything else to get at your keyboard. So we're going to take up your hard drive, your fans, your heat sink, all these components, unplug everything, and take up the motherboard. So this is going to be a fun process, guys, to access your keyboard. Okay, so to start removing items, you have your hard drive right here on the left of my screen. This hard drive caddy is the metal section over the hard drive. You have a screw in each of the 4 corners, one here, 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 and here. That will remove the hard drive caddy. The hard drive is plugged into this SATA connection cable here, and it plugs into the motherboard there. So we're going to grip that black pull tab and just pull that straight up and off of the motherboard. That will unhook this cable. You can remove this hard drive right out of the computer. Your RAM stick is right there. You don't necessarily need to remove the RAM. It's just whenever I'm removing components, I like removing everything. It limits the chances of damaging things. So I would remove this single RAM stick. It's really easy to do. This metal pry arm here, this metal spring-loaded arm on either side, pry those gently apart from each other, away from the RAM stick. It will then release. It'll pop up a little bit in most cases, and then you can slide it out of that port. Your Wi-Fi card is right up here. It's held down by a single screw right there on top. This metal bracket right there will release, and then the Wi-Fi card can be pulled out of this port right there. You'll have to unattach the antenna wire from the Wi-Fi card unless you want to leave it just dangling there. Those are snaps. You can just snap those right off of the Wi-Fi card. Your heatsink, your fan assembly, it's this whole thing up here. You got 2 fans, and then a heatsink that runs over your CPU and GPU area. So there are quite a few screws that you need to undo to get at your fan and your heatsink. There's a screw here in the corner of the fan and then down here in the left corner. Same thing on the left-hand side. There's only 2 screws, here and here. And then the fans themselves plug into the motherboard here for the right and here for the left. Now, these are very fragile wires. They're more fragile even than the battery wire. So definitely don't pull on the wires to unplug these. As you can see on your computer, there's a ribbing on either side, a little grip on the left and right there, on the top and bottom here. So you can use a pry tool, your fingernails. You should be able to wiggle that out of the port without pulling on that wire. There's a few more screws. So you have these 2 screws right here, these 2 screws in the middle, and these 2 screws on the left end. After that happens, you'll be able to get your heatsink assembly up. Keep in mind, if you are taking up your heatsink assembly, you will need to reapply thermal paste. Thermal paste doesn't like it when it reacts to air, and then you lock that air in. So if you are taking this up for any reason, you definitely want to reapply thermal paste. I will have a video link above, also below in the description. It'll be a tutorial showing you how you can reapply thermal paste. You definitely want to clean all the old stuff off before you reapply new thermal paste. You don't want to apply too much thermal paste. If you do, it could have a reverse effect. It could lock heat in instead of facilitating its transport out. And the last thing to shout out is not all thermal paste is created equal. The cheap stuff is cheap. The more expensive stuff will do a better job at transporting heat out. So in that link I told you about with all the repair tools and supplies, I'll have a couple different thermal cooling paste options. One will be on the cheaper side. One will be a little more quality. So you guys can decide which one you want to use. So after we've removed the battery, the hard drive, the heatsink and fans, and all these components, we need to unplug everything that's left in the computer. So you're talking about these ribbon cables down here, these 2 ribbon cables. This plug right here, you undo this single black screw, take this metal bracket off. You can unplug that LCE cable, unplug this cable here. Your speaker cable runs right here. It's hard to see on the screen, but you'll see it in your computer. That pulls up and off, directly up, 90-degree angle, out of the computer, off the motherboard for your speaker wire. Be careful when unplugging ribbon cables like these. I'll explain how these work. The way these clips work, they're very, very fragile. This one is a white port with a black clip. This one is a gray black port with a white clip. They both work the same way. So the black clip here and the white clip there, they open and close like a book cover. The hinges are on top. It opens from the bottom. You would insert a very small, very flat pry tool from the bottom under that clip very gently and pop it up. Then you can slide the ribbon cables out. And then you would put it back down so it doesn't get caught on anything. These are very fragile, these clips. If you break them, you probably won't be able to find a replacement. So go very slow, be very careful, don't break those. And just go around your motherboard, try to find anything that needs to be unplugged, unclipped, and then we're gonna start unscrewing the screws to get your motherboard out. So you're gonna have these 2 screws here near the left, this in the bottom corner of the motherboard, and you're gonna see white little triangles or arrows to all the motherboard screws. So that can help as you're going through your motherboards on your computer projects. That can help find your screws. Get these 2 here, these 2 in the top middle. Again, you've got to unscrew that to take your LCD cable up. And then these 3 screws down here need to come off. Once you get your motherboard up, here is your keyboard underneath. A ton of screws keeping this thing down. Horrible design. I'm glad they don't do this anymore. Makes no sense, but you got to take a ton of screws up to get this keyboard out. So these are all the screws that need to come up. You get all these along the edges here. These 2 you have to get underneath the yellow tape. These go all along here, all these screws. And then these you have to peel up with a small flat pry tool, peel up that little black flap, and you'll access these screws. But once you get these 1,000 screws up, then you'll be able to access your keyboard. You'll be able to remove your keyboard. In the link below I told you about with all the replacement and upgrade parts for this model computer, I will try to include a keyboard replacement if you guys are looking for help with that. So that's the video. I hope it was helpful. Please feel free to subscribe if you enjoy DIY computer content like this, but also if you just want to keep me on hand to answer any of your computer questions. I do try to answer all questions and comments at least a couple times a day. But make sure you do check out the FAQs below in the description. It could save you some time getting an answer to commonly asked questions. So thank you so much for watching. I look forward to seeing you on my next video.